All right, I don't know what time it is on your clock, but I know what I'm getting ready for. It is time for the Professional CISO podcast with David Malicoat.
Welcome, one and all, to the Professional CISO Show. I'm your host, David Malicoat. This show is an exploration of the topics necessary to transition the role of the CISO into one of a professional. All right, gang, today, I'm privileged. We have an interview with one of the most influential CISOs in the last few decades. And his roots are in the military, municipal government, cybersecurity products, and venture capital. He is also a noted author in the cybersecurity field. Some notables about our guest today, and this is pretty cool. He and his family are big Major League Baseball fans, and they've been to 16 of the 30 MLB stadiums. And every year for vacation, they try to work it in. You know, they want to go have fun, but at the same time, they want to go, continue this passion. They try to work in a couple more of those on every family trip, which is pretty cool. Something they can all share. And then another I thought was very interesting, he raises roses. So he has 13 different varieties in his flower beds in his home there in San Diego. And maybe we'll chat about that a little bit. And if you haven't guessed who it was yet, we'll get to that in a second. I do want to do a huge reminder. So North Texas CISO, they're having their second annual golf tournament on November 4th. And it's a noon shotgun start. It'll be held at the Hackberry Country Club, and the format will be a scramble. Just want to give a shout out to them. This is one of their primary ways that they get the funds to fund their cybersecurity students in the region when it comes to scholarships and things like that. So if you're a vendor, consider sponsoring. If you're a practitioner, come out and participate. And if you're anyone else, whatever category you may fall in, there are plenty of volunteer opportunities as well. And so come join the largest ISA chapter in the world and help them support what's going on here in our local community. And then finally, like, follow, share, right? So, and we've been seeing the results of this here recently. We've bumped up significantly in our numbers, which is great. We appreciate the support. But if you like the kind of content that you're getting, hit that follow button on Spotify and Apple. Hit subscribe on YouTube. Maybe send a comment, share it with one of your friends. Follow us on LinkedIn. We appreciate it. All right, now let's talk about being a professional CISO. In today's episode, our guest is Gary Hayslip. Currently, he is the Global Chief Information Security Officer at SoftBank Investment Advisors. He has held positions at the U.S. Navy, another veteran, the city of San Diego, WebRoot, as well as a large number of advisory positions. He is also the co-author of multiple books to include the CISO Desk Reference Volumes 1 and 2. Please welcome Gary Hayslip.
Thanks, Dave. I'm happy to be here.
Appreciate your time today. I just got to say, the first time I thought about becoming a CISO, your book was the first one I picked up, because it was the way that was structured, the way that it was written, very practical advice, very, very, so just wanted to say I appreciate that. It helped me in my journey significantly.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I mean, that's my co-authors and I. We wrote it, that way on purpose, actually. Volume 1 and Volume 2, they're supposed to be together as a set, and progressively, as you read the book and the various chapters, they're supposed to build on each other, and they were designed for that. Bill Bonney, who was a CISO at Intuit, he had recently retired, and Matt Stamper has been a CIO and a CISO, and then also has worked for like Gartner and different, as a consultant in different types of companies, and then myself. All three of us had very unique views on things and experience on things, and you see that in the book, where I think each chapter, when you get our three views on the specific topic, it's like 30,000 foot level, 10,000 foot level, and then me, and I'm at like the 100-foot level at the practitioner level. And so you can take all three of us, and then at the end of the chapter, we give you takeaways which you can use as a CISO for you and your teams. And it was designed that way. I mean, and time and time again, I run into people all over the world who've, and we constantly keep them updated, and we've written other books since then. And and the whole series has been designed to go ahead and help our community. And yeah, I meet people all over the world at different events that I go to who, pull out a copy, and they want me to sign it or something. And it's like, and I get, whether it's in India or whether it's in China or whether it's in Israel or whether it's in, Brazil, I'm not, I don't get surprised anymore because it just seems that somebody's read it somewhere.
Does it ever get old?
No, it's actually a lot of fun. I mean, it's like, the original reason we came up with the idea over some fish tacos and beer at a startup event where we were talking about it originally, was correct. We thought that there was a need for it, and time and time again we realized, we guessed right. So I'm really glad that that you've enjoyed it. That has helped you.
Well, and I think I'm not the only one. I think I can speak for a lot of CISOs out there that it's a mainstay, right? I think and I think it is the uniqueness of that tri-level where you can identify yourself in any or all of those three opinions or those three guidances that you guys put at the end of each section, which is huge. Okay, so Gary Hayslip, long storied career, and I want you to go back. Like, when did you first find cyber? When did cyber find you? Maybe start with technology, then maybe cyber. But talk me through. Was it single digit age, Gary? Was it a little later than that? Was it the military, Gary? Talk me through kind of your arc. And I know there's a whole lot there, but talk me through like that start and then kind of through today.
Yeah, really starting technology is a single digit, Gary. I mean, I've been playing with computers. Since I was 6, 7, 8 years old, putting together my first ones, whether it was a Tandy or whether it was a Commodore 64 and building and typically what ends up happening is I get something and then I immediately start playing with it. I break it, and at that time I didn't want to tell my parents I'd just broken this $5,000 piece of equipment that they had bought for the house, and so I'm like scrambling around to figure out how to fix it, and which is normally part of the course for me is I end up figuring out how to try to make it better, and in the process I break things and then I put it back together. But that's so I've been dealing with technology for decades, and both of my sons are the same way as well. It drives my wife nuts because she thinks she's got 3 teenagers instead of 1. But it's like and then I mean security was something that just kind of grew on me. Like most of us, I was involved heavily in technology and was in dev and was programming and building networks and stuff. And it was when I was in the military that I was, building out networks. And that's when I got my, it was in the early 1990s that I got my first brush about security, which made sense at the time. We were like, okay, we're building these things. How do we keep people out of them? They should only be for, people at work. They should only be for people that are in the U.S. Navy, so of course, that makes sense. But, but at the time I was like, oh, so that, and that's when I started realizing there was a whole side to networking. There was a whole side to, managing computers and stuff, that I'd never thought of before. I was always building things and breaking into things and, hacking and working on stuff. And then it kind of dawned on me. I'm like, oh, how about if we're doing computers, that means I got to put things together to keep people out of them. Oh, how do we do that? And that was the first time that I really got into and started really looking at security. Was about mid 1995, 96 timeframe.
Love it. Okay. And so would you consider your time in the military in the U.S. Navy, is that the thing that pushed you into the leadership side of things already? Because, looking at your career history, you pretty much had the leadership badge before that transition happened. So was it the military that made that happen and then you just took it from there on your civilian side?
Yeah, I mean, what traditionally happens in the military is once they find out that you're competent about something, they have no problem giving you another hat to wear, and another hat to wear, and another hat to wear. And that's what ended up happening. I mean, I joined the military as a fire controlman. Fire controlmen are advanced weapon systems. You go to school for multiple years. learning electrical engineering, electronics, and everything from phase radar systems and water control, everything from cooling systems and radar systems, and I mean, it was amazing the amount of schooling and stuff that I went through. But all of that is managed by computers, and so more and more that they train me in advanced electronics and then electronics engineering and stuff. More and more I was using computers,
Right.
and which I'd been playing with since I was a kid, and so what ended up happening was, I took it to the next level. I started doing all the maintenance on the computers and taking them apart and updating them and installing them then then the people that were in charge of the computers for the DoD systems were like, hey, we need someone to be in charge. So, they just went ahead and grabbed me. So then it became an extra duty, that I was doing. And then we need someone to go ahead and help do the security piece too. So then it became another extra duty, that I was doing. And so, yeah, I mean, that's what happened, in the military was it became all of these extra jobs that I was doing. And, in that process, I realized there's a whole other world outside of the military as well that's using computers. And that's where I ended up building a lab in my garage. And I mean, I was ordering all kinds of crap off of eBay and had a massive, lab in my garage and racks of equipment. And I was volunteering my time at like the Boys and Girls Club and a lot of nonprofits just to manage their network so I could get experience. I was paying for my own certs and everything because, I realized back in the mid to late 90s that at that time, I felt like this was going to blow up, and that all the networking and stuff that I was in, and the security stuff that I was just starting to get into, I felt like this was going to be my career, And so I knew back then this is where I wanted to be at, and so I volunteered for all the leadership roles that the Navy was going to give me, and was happily grabbing and taking the CI role here and the CISO role there, and then doing all this stuff on the civilian side as well. On the weekends when in the evenings and the weekends when I wasn't at work with the U.S. Navy, I was, over at some nonprofit, over at, some small business managing their network for them. I had my own LLC on the side and I was just working, and I was learning the stuff. And I was sitting in my garage where my lab was at and hacking and learning how to program and paying for my own certs and stuff because I felt like this is where I needed to be. And this is what, this was the future, and I guess, right. I mean, I knew that the way things were going, this was probably going to blow up, and I wanted to be involved in it, and that's what I did. Was so it was I spent years in my garage, before I, bought VMware and stuff and virtualized everything, and got rid of all of the extra computers and the rack of equipment that I had, but and my wife just kind of put up with it, but she just supported me and realized that at times I may have been a madman, but there was a reason for it, and it's paid dividends. I mean, I look at where I'm at now, and I just had this vision of where I thought things were going to go, and many of the people that I hung out with in DoD who were doing a lot of the same stuff believed the same thing, and we all were on the side helping each other. And that's where I got the whole idea about community as well, and I got the whole idea about taking care of your teams, and because there was this group of up and coming leaders in the government space at the time, not just in the military, but also in the government as well, and we were a part of several professional organizations for government employees, and several of us had this vision that this made sense. This is where things were going to go. And so, yeah, it just kind of took off from there.
Sounds like a great story arc for the young folks out there today, I think. All right, so we're going to transition into kind of the main point of the show, which is this could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different folks. So, there's no set answer. And I definitely want to hear your opinion because of your experience. So do you believe that in the idea that we must professionalize the role of CISO? If so, what does it mean to you? What does that look like? And if not, why?
Yes, I think it's going that way. The thing about it is that, and I've had these discussions with various boards, that I advise or boards that I actually sit on as a director. the CISO role is pretty unique because, I mean, cyber is to me, cyber is a discipline. It's a discipline that's made up of multiple domains. And, you know, the CISO role is like kind of like the lead executive role within cyber, but to get there, takes years of experience. It's not something you just go to class for and boop, you become, a CISO. It's something that you kind of grow into over time. You're a team leader, you're a supervisor of a team, or you're a supervisor of projects, and then later you're a manager, and then later you might be a deputy, and then eventually you get your first CISO role. You kind of grow into it, and usually it's about your 10-year mark. Somewhere between 8 to 10 years, where you start getting your first kind of a senior leadership role, and it makes sense, because what it is that each business uses that executive, that leader, differently depending on what the business needs, and so it isn't like there's a set CISO template and all businesses will hire this. Right. That's not going to happen. I mean, because the business, the organization, I shouldn't just say business. I mean, the organization that's hiring a CISO, they're going to use them for different things. I mean, over the last year or so, I've seen a lot of CISO roles that are CISO/CIO, where they are taking a lot of the infrastructure and network and various teams and putting them up underneath, the CISO title. And I've done that before. Again, some businesses will do that where they'll break up the CIO role and they'll move it up underneath CTO and up underneath CISO. I've also seen the CISO role moved up underneath the chief recruiting officer or moved around, just depending. Again, each business does it differently. With that said, because of the role becoming so visible, because of the role so intertwined with business operations, and especially if you are an organization that is publicly traded, that role being involved with business, reporting to boards, there needs to start being some type of a maturity mechanism. And maybe it's what happens is that this happens for, if you're hiring a CISO and you're publicly traded, you have to follow this specific path. And the reason is because these people may be before the SEC. These people may be, providing data to the company's 8K or 10K, depending on if they've had an incident or not. These people may be required to report to specific committees or specific boards. And so if you're in this type of role, you should have this specific training or this specific certs, or you should demonstrate, experience within, specific domains. And so I do think it's going that way. Do I think a startup that's hiring their first CISO should have to jump through all the hoops as, say, someone who's a Fortune 100 is hiring? No. I don't. And I think that's what's going to be happening over the next couple of years, is they're sorting that out, right. As to, as you're more junior, you are at a specific level. And then as you become more senior, you have to follow, a specific pipeline or a specific path. And sometimes you see that in organizations as well that are hiring CFOs, right. If you're a small business, if you're a startup, the CFO you start with may not be the CFO that you go to IPO with. Right. And again, you're going to change out depending on the needs of the business. And I think that happens in the CISO ranks as well.
Got it. And so along the same line, let's talk a little bit about CISO tenure, right? So in a recent article, you indicate that 18 to 36 months is correct for a new executive position for CISOs. Can you provide a little bit of insight into your thinking and analysis on that? Because to me, it's a little, not shocking, but it's a little different than what everybody else is saying. Everybody's always talking about oh my gosh, it's only 18 to 36 months. Kind of talk to me through the sanity of that piece.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and there's been a bunch of research on this. I mean, they've showed that the typical CIO role is about 50 to 54 months. And the CISO role tends to be, and again, it depends if you are Fortune 100 or if you are Fortune 1000. If you're Fortune 100, the CISO role jumps to 50 plus months. If you are in a smaller to medium-sized company, the CISO role jumps to around 24 to 36 months range. And I think what happens, a lot of it is it's a mixture of burnout. It's a mixture of, it usually takes you about 12 to 18 months to get there, start putting your team program together, and you get to a level to where, okay, all right, I've got it in place. I've got my strategic plan in place. Am I going to be effective or not? And so that's about the 18-month mark. You're like, okay, am I going to be effective or not? And then you bang away for about maybe another 18 months. And then at the end of that, you're kind of like, okay, I'm effective. I'm doing well. I'm going to stay for a bit. Or these people have lost their minds. I don't want to play here anymore.
Right.
I'm out of here. And traditionally, since the CISO role is one of those that's been kind of like in high demand, CISOs could do that.
Right.
At the 24-month mark, hey, I don't want to play here anymore. I'm out. The market right now though is not very forgiving at the moment. I know CISOs right now that have been looking for 8, 10, 12, 14 months.
Right.
Depending on where they live at and everything, obviously, if you're in a small town in Kansas, you're going to have a lot harder time and you're looking at remote roles, vice if you're living in Dallas,
Right.
So it's, again, results will vary, but, right now the market has not been as friendly to people in the senior technical roles, So I've seen CISOs taking individual contributor roles or even going ahead and saying, hey, I may have been a CISO at this company, but now I'm going to a Fortune 100 company over here and I'll just take a deputy role and I'm okay with that. Right. It's kind of a mixed bag at the moment.
All right. So I want to shift over to veterans for a minute. Yeah, you're a veteran. I'm a veteran. By the way, shipmate, I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I know you're a Navy veteran. Appreciate that, number one. I think there's a lot that comes from that, which is why I wanted to ask you this question. In today's, transitioning veteran, what should they be doing, whether they're currently practicing cybersecurity in the military or maybe not, but what should they be thinking about? Because it's different from when I got out, and I know it's different from when you got out. So what should they be thinking about right now?
I go ahead and I actually mentor and work with several veterans groups, and I go and explain to them. I said, one of the first things is that you're not going to be in the military forever, and that transition can be brutal if like you're scrambling in your last couple of months. Honestly, you should be planning 2 years out. Easily 2 years before you are looking at leaving, you should already be transitioning. You should already be in your head, be visiting professional groups, doing research, on, roles and jobs that you might be interested in, looking at your experience and figuring out, hey, should I be doing some classes on the side already? Because you can do so many classes remote now as it is.
Right.
There's no excuse. I mean, I did my bachelor's degree while on deployment, in the Middle East. You can take a laptop with you anywhere.
Absolutely.
And be working on, working on a degree or working on certs or whatever. Now, with that said, now dealing with cyber, I've explained to, people that are in the military, that are looking at transitioning, that maybe not, they haven't had a lot of experience with cyber or a lot of experience with IT, and they're looking at, where to start. And I told them, I said, cyber is one of those unique places where it's a first responder. Would be the best way to explain it. You're 24/7. It's a first responder. It's mission driven. It's one of those type of roles, one of those type of domains, one of those type of job fields that's used everywhere, within organizations. That's constantly changing. So you're always having to educate yourself and learn new things. There's always new puzzles and things to work and things to figure out. And I sit there and, and I told people that, if you still want to serve, if you still want to be a part of something where you feel like, you're fighting the bad guys and you're doing something good and you're, cyber is one of those places where you're going to get that, where you're going to find there's a lot of military vets that are in the field, where you're going to feel like that sense of purpose, that sense of drive, that sense of mission, because that's what cyber is, and so I recommend to them, if they're interested, start thinking about it and start looking at it. If you're looking at, what fields, what areas to get into and stuff, I've had several of them recently. I told them, hey, go look at Cloud Guru, start working on some cloud certs, where you can start learning the basics of cloud, take some classes on Udemy and Python and start learning in Python. So you get the basics of scripting. So you get the basics of scripting and you get the basics of cloud, and how networks and everything are put together in the cloud. Those two will give you a background that then you can add to, whether you add to security or whether you add dev or whatever else you want to add to it. But I do stuff like that where I recommend, 2 years out, they should already be working on these things.
Great stuff, and I think that's great, solid, and I appreciate that you did that, because one of the goals of the show that people walk away with actionable information, and I think that hit the nail on the head, and I truly appreciate that. All right, shift a little bit again. I got a couple more topics I want to hit in the time we have remaining. There's a movement to create a professional CISO association of sorts, and I know there's a couple different that are out there. Yep. I want to hear your take on this, and what are your thoughts? Is this something we need right now? Is this something we should be doing?
I think it's something that, many of my peers feel like we need to do, with both, two people having, gone to the SEC and the court drama and everything like that now, and several more who are kind of, on the burner waiting to see what the SEC is going to do, I go ahead and I look at it, that there's been a lot of discussion now that, with CISOs reporting to boards, with CISOs all of a sudden being pulled into, court cases and dramas like this. There needs to be, insurance coverage. There needs to be education around, the laws and stuff like that applies to them when they're dealing with boards, or even if they're serving on boards, or advising, companies. These things are making the role itself, I guess you could say, maturing it and making it more professional. I think, a couple of years ago, honestly, it's been years in the making. Unfortunately, it's taken, some of the recent, things with Tim and with Joel, people having to, go to court and everything, the kind of, to bring up the severity and stuff to the point to where people are like, okay, hey, we should be doing something here. Right. Yes, there are several organizations that are kind of standing up. I'm expecting they may actually combine and kind of collapse, but I do think there's going to be some drive around education, some drive around either certifying or trying to hammer some type of rules or regs or something to go ahead and follow. I wouldn't be surprised if the government starts, getting involved as well, just because of the criticality of the role. When you really think about, the fact that cyber is so intertwined in business operations and stuff today, and you think of how big of an impact that ransomware and, malware and cyber attacks and stuff have on business today. Right. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar business, for the bad guy side, so I mean, it's, I just think it's, it isn't something that, it's just going to fade away. It's been a long time coming, and I'm curious to see where it goes, and how well it matures. Agreed.
Yeah, totally agree on that. Okay, I'm going to transition to our last question, and then we get 10 questions with Gary Hayslip. Okay. And I wanted to ask this question because, you're one of the most long-standing, I think, with your experience. You've written the books, you've done the talks, you've advised boards, you've advised products. What does the future hold for us as CISOs? What does it look like out at the horizon, maybe a little bit beyond?
Yeah, we the whole leaning forward thing, where are we going? And I think we're starting to see some of it now, where other roles are going to collapse into the CISO role. When you really think about it, we're business executives that manage risk. using technology and people and process, reporting to the board, reporting to our executive teams. And what I think was going to happen is the role is going to merge with some of the risk executive roles. It's going to merge with IT, and it's going to become a lot broader remit, and so I see that happening. I also see it becoming more of a business role as well, where, especially if you're working with companies that are doing product, your teams are going to be heavily involved, not just in AppSec, but also in product sec as well, because there's going to be requirements that companies are going to be held accountable, for the security of their products. So you're going to, the CISO and somebody on their team is going to get more involved. So I see the role, definitely transforming. And you're already starting to see it with what recruiters are looking for over the last year. I see it escalating, honestly. Yep. I also see more of it involved with AI. I mean, my team is heavily involved with Gen AI. My company, we invest in it. We, own companies that do it. We use it extensively, here at SoftBank. And and to me, it's not something to run from. It's something that you figure out how to use, you figure out how to protect, and it's a resource, and so it's something that as a CISO, it's going to be merged and intertwined with the other technologies that you have, and when you're doing it well, you're going to be effective, you're going to be productive. If you're screwing it up, it's a resume generating event. You go back, you reset, and you figure out what you need to do next.
Right.
But that's what I'm expecting, leading forward, is that it's definitely going to be merging with some of the other roles. And it makes sense. Companies are not going to pay for multiple technical executives. How about we pay for one that's already doing it, plus they're doing risk, and they also understand audit, and they're working with, several of the other stakeholders. So that's what some of the changes I'm seeing happening now, and I honestly think it's going to escalate.
Agreed. I'm seeing that. I'm seeing the escalation and the acceleration as well. I just know of two off the top of my head in the last probably 6 months that picked up the CIO from, and they were already a CISO. All right, so now it's time. We're going to do 10 questions with Gary Hayslip. I'm waiting for this, believe me. All right, so Gary, what's your favorite word?
Sandy, my wife's name.
There you go. Love it.
We've been together 36 years, and she's put up with me.
Completely understand. What's your least favorite word?
Taxes.
I understand that completely as well. What area of your work do you find most interesting?
Where I'm at currently, what I find most interesting is doing due diligence on new investments, just looking at companies and trying to identify risk and help my teams make a decision, whether it's a go, no go.
What area of your work is the most challenging for you?
Working with VIPs. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, they're busy.
Yep.
They're working 60, 70 hours. They're extremely busy. And whether you like it or not, cyber impacts everything. Yeah. And so there's times where working with VIPs, I've got to kind of explain to them why they can't do something. And I've learned that it isn't no, it's maybe. And I spend a lot of time educating them and helping them. So it could be challenging, but I learn a lot myself. So I mean, I can't complain.
Agreed. What sound or noise do you love?
What sound or noise do I love? Crap. I actually like the sound of the ocean.
Love it.
Not when you're sitting on the beach. I like the sound of the ocean when you're on a ship underway. And I'd be standing watch outside and just listening to the waves on the ship.
And I can say I'll second that. I agree. There's nothing like being on a ship in the dark,
you're like,
sunset.
Yeah, you're in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It's 2:00 in the morning. You're standing outside on the bridge wing and you're just listening to the waves.
Totally agree.
Yep.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Car horns.
What is your favorite curse word?
Holy sheep shit Batman.
Okay. I think that's one of the most creative ones we've had so far. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I think it probably on the VC side.
Hmm.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time working with startups and advising, and honestly, I love it, especially if if they're cyber or new technology related companies.
What profession would you not like to do?
Anything in the medical field.
Hmm.
Too many regulations. They don't get paid enough. Too much stress.
Understood. And the final question, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear your God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I got a new laptop for you.
Love it. All right, gang, we covered so much today. First off, I want to thank Gary. What a privilege, number one, to be able to talk to somebody and interview somebody that had so much influence on how I started my career or started my role as a CISO. Obviously, we covered professionalizing the role. We covered about professional associations. We heard his story. We heard about around what the future is going to look like for CISO. I think we kind of see that forming up before our eyes. But in the end, colleagues and friends, I renew the call. We must professionalize the role of the CISO. In the meantime, I wish you health, happiness, and success on your journey in becoming the professional CISO. Let's do this.
We're professionalizing the CISO role, so please subscribe to the Professional CISO podcast.